Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
Considering you're helping their citizens see the real world. And I can't think of an easier way of introducing you to a person whose, if name and face is not familiar, then you must not have seen a recent cover of Newsweek, because he was on it. And now he's here at Gnomedex, Austin-heap. You good? Is that right? You got it? Okay.
Nice, thank you. So as Chris mentioned, my name is Austin, and I'm not going to talk just about Iran. I'm going to talk about something that's near and dear to many of our hearts. Oh, I'm not on the screen. Yeah, I am. Antenna-gate. Just kidding. As Chris mentioned, come on, phone. My name's Austin-heap, and I'm the director of a nonprofit in San Francisco, California called the Censorship-Research Center. And we are dedicated to, fighting censorship in all the forms that it occurs around the world, be it, online, be it, a form of societal pressure to self-censor. And we do that through three main things: research, outreach and education, and finally, when necessary, technology. So I was talking with Kat about how exactly I should do the presentation, if I should focus on, one tiny thing, or just do an overview of what's gone on in the past year, which I've kind of decided is going to be more effective. And I'm going to do this in a 5-part how-to series. The first part, and I know this is a controversial term, is how to tweet a revolution. The second will be how to have a problem, which I'm really good at. The third is going to be how to be a lobbyist when you're not a DC Wonk type. It's kind of interesting. How to keep secrets, and finally, how to go viral. So we all heard about the so-called Twitter revolution that was going on in the months and weeks after the election in Iran. There was a lot of hype, and it's one of the most overused phrases that I can remember in past times. But it's really important to understand what value Twitter did provide, not only to those in Iran, but those outside of Iran. There's this type of virtuous cycle that goes on with Twitter in oppressive regimes. The first thing that you'll have is you'll have people within, be it Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, record stuff on their cell phones, on video cameras, and that takes some time to, get out of the country. Eventually that gets sent to either an activist or it gets uploaded to YouTube. Finally, the mainstream media picks it up, and then it's generally broadcast back into these countries via pirate radio or illegal satellite transmissions. And so while Twitter is not the driving factor, it still provides this very important, it's generally about a 72-hour cycle where people inside the country can find out what people in other cities are doing and how it's all, what exactly is going on. So it's not Twitter that's, saving Iran or revolutionizing anything, but it is providing a very, very important conduit that never existed before. I worked with a lot of organizations like CNN and Amnesty International in the weeks after the election, just trying to verify information because nobody really knew what we could and could not trust. It's the first time that we've had to largely rely on crowdsourced media to figure out what was going on in the country. All of the reporters have been kicked out. The internet filtering was at an all-time high, and so, it was a struggle to find out how to get information. But Twitter is also primarily the reason that I'm here. So the night of the election, I was sitting around, like I used to do, playing Warcraft, and I was watching my Twitter feed, and I noticed Iran election go into the trending topics. And so I was kind of reading about the claims that the election was rigged, and then it started getting more interesting, and people were claiming that they were not able to access social media websites, claiming that the internet was unusable at all. And so the first thing that we thought to do was, I'm just going to post some instructions on my blog for how someone can set up a squid proxy. Pretty straightforward stuff for people in Iran. Glad that went over well with some of you. And within a few days, nearly 10,000 people around the world had used their home computer to set up proxies for people in Iran. from their laptops to their home computers to, servers that they had at school. It was really, really phenomenal to see the outpouring. But there's only one of me, and managing 10,000 proxies and also trying to manage like the communication with activists in a country that I've never been to, let alone at that point didn't know too much about, was simply unrealistic. So we started a project to manage all these proxies, self-test them, make sure that they were functional, make sure that they weren't revealing any data, making sure they were locked down to people in Iran, that way they wouldn't be exploited by other people. But it wasn't happening. By the time I would get a proxy to someone in Iran, someone who had installed it on their home laptop had closed the screen. And that's a really difficult thing. So we decided, let's try to figure out something scalable. And that took a bit of working. One of the things that I realized while the whole election was going on is that, people were getting really angry at Twitter, or this notion that it was, going to overthrow the regime. And the tool is never what matters. It's people that matter. In my later years, I've really just quit caring about the tool because it's all who's behind the screen. It was really frustrating for people to think that there was, Twitter was going to save something when that was clearly not going to happen. But it was also amazing how I could figure stuff out via Twitter. If I needed a contact at the United Nations, just tweet. If I needed an airline sponsor because I needed to fly a bunch of people to San Francisco, just tweet, and I can normally make all of this come together within 12 hours. I needed a law firm because I'm not a lawyer, and put out a tweet, and within a couple days we had a pro bono agreement with arguably the second biggest, most powerful law firm in the United States, who I owe a lot to. Huh? So the ability to connect outside of my immediate circle was really what Twitter provided, and that's also, what led us to the next steps. So as the filtering got worse and the regime was blocking our workarounds via the proxy servers, moving them on ports, SSL, trying different obfuscation methods, the communication was just getting more and more restricted. But during this process, and this is why I for me, it's love-hate relationship with Twitter. I hate the fact that people put it on a pedestal, it drives me crazy, but it is also insanely valuable. Through this process, I was invited into a chat room where I was provided with a 96-page document from within the regime that outlines how all of their internal filtering works. And while I can't read Farsi, I'm a wee bit better now, network diagrams are network diagrams. You can quickly deconstruct what is going on. And that's when we started thinking, okay, maybe we really can build something scalable. We were just provided with the information that we needed. And that's when Haystack was born, and that's when all the problems started. So Haystack is, actually just 2 steps, but the first thing it does is it uses standard encryption to encrypt all the data coming out of a computer. The second thing it does is it obfuscates that data to look like innocuous traffic. So it looks like you're visiting weather.com, or in the case of Iran, we spoof the government's own website, so it looks like you're visiting Press TV or ahmadinejad.ir. We had our first successful test July 7th, after many long nights of programming, and we began circulating preview copies so that other people could test it, and this all came to a grinding halt. It was a problem I really never saw coming. I was out having a beer with one of the members of our legal team, and he's like, Austin, you can't export this. You're breaking the laws. And the first thing that goes through my head is, watch me. I don't really deal well when people tell me no. But, as we discussed this more, it became very clear that the amount of sanctions that the United States has against Iran, if they decided to go after us for breaking the sanction laws, the project would just fall apart. And that's the last thing I want, is to get, 6 months into the project and then have everything just go belly up because we didn't take care of the sanction issue. But the bigger question was, how do you take care of a sanction issue? So I decided that it was time to go to Washington. We needed to lobby to get some stuff done, and I was going to figure out how to make it happen. And that's easier said than done. Going back to the Twitter thing, I'll talk about one of the huge downsides of Twitter. When we first formed our team, it was really just this ragtag group of people. We all met online. I thought they were semi-intelligent, and we'd go forward peacefully. Not the case. So on one of our first trips to DC, I decided to bring along the whole team, to try to build camaraderie so we could all spend some one-on-one time with each other and, figure out what people's strengths were. Oops. We were at a meeting with some of Pelosi's staffers, and, half the group is posing for pictures in front of congressional security. You can't do that when you're in Pelosi's office. That's just kind of trashy. And then once we got to our meeting, one of the people, without telling me, started passing out these tweets that they had printed out to show these congressional staffers what was going on in Iran. These people get security briefings every day. They're not going to be clued in on some tweets that you printed out, which are unsourced and unverified. All I can think is horror. I'm like, who in their right mind prints out tweets to, give to people like this? And that's when I realized, we needed to kind of lock down the team and figure out, or get people who weren't going to be all droopy-eyed, when they were in DC. Every person on that trip, except for one, is no longer with the team. But let me give you a quick background on OFAC, which is one of the sanction laws that we violate. OFAC is the Office of Foreign Asset Controls, and they regulate and enforce all sanctions that the United States has. And in order to get an OFAC exemption, it's not like you go to getmyofac.gov. There's not a form that you fill out. It's really something that you just, you kind of have to work with the appropriate people to move forward. And at first it was pretty hard, as an outsider. You can call the primary State Department phone number, but they're not going to talk to you. You can harass Treasury all day long, but they're not going to talk to you. You've really got to know the right people, which I didn't know any of them. Figuring out who controls everything. It's funny because hindsight, I feel like I'm a sanction expert. I can tell you about sanctions with all kinds of countries, who controls them, how to get around them. It's really no more than I want to know about them. So after spending, 9 months in DC, submitting hundreds and hundreds of pages of paperwork, there was one point I was on 9 flights a day because I'd take red eyes to DC and then have to be back in San Francisco for something. Meeting with senators, state, treasury, other administration officials. I got a call while I was in London, and apparently Secretary Clinton, was in Russia and made an announcement that one US firm had been licensed to export anti-censorship software to Iran without naming the organization. So I'm freaking out. The time difference, I can't get a hold of any of my team, and I can't get a hold of people in DC to figure out if, is this what I think it is? And so after I got back to the States, I went to check our P.O. box. And, I'm rummaging through all the mail, and there's this envelope that says, United States Department of Treasury. And my heart just hits the ground. I tore it open and immediately started tearing up, and, lo and behold, it was our license. We're the first U.S. organization to ever be licensed to export anti-censorship software to Iran, and we hope soon many other countries. And not only that, one thing that I learned is if, I think my last slide said it's much easier if you're not a politician. Because I'm not trying to get elected, I can kind of show up and be a lot less diplomatic than a normal DC Beltway person would have to be. And we got our license issued faster than any other OFAC license has ever been granted. So I'm really happy that everything went that way. But during this entire time, DC moves really, really slow. I was also working on another project, and one of many people working on another project. How many of you are familiar with the video of Neda? So she was a young woman who was gunned down in the streets of Iran after the election. The video was filmed by, I guess there's 2 angles of it at this point that I've seen. And, her grave was desecrated by either the Basij or the regime. The Basij are like the military state police in Iran. Her family has not talked to anyone. And so someone had approached me and told me that they had gotten their family to agree to do the first ever interview about their daughter. And the plan was, we're going to train someone who looks, just like a Persian tourist, to go in with a low enough quality camera and film. And we were able to, the rest of the team was able to acquire 15 hours of footage with their family and then get that out of Iran. I'll leave that to your imagination. We were able to get him out safely in asylum. We were able to get his partner out and get him asylum as well. So I'm happy that everyone involved in the project is completely safe at this point. So before I go into the next part, I'm just going to show you the trailer for what we ended up doing with everything. Oh yes. Can I get audio on this?
No, it's definitely plugged in now.
She was shot in her heart, and I knew that she was dead.
I begged Neda not to go out. She said, if I don't go out, who will?
She knew there was a risk she'd be killed, but she was not afraid.
She was beautiful even after death, like an angel.
Somebody was able to get that video all around the world in a moment.
People were holding out the camera as if it were a sword, and they understood that would be our greatest hope.
This martyred woman became the symbol of the new citizen journalism.
Iran will never be the same after Neda's death.
She didn't die in vain. It is the beginning of the end.
So, we had what we thought was a really powerful story, and, it's just really amazing to hear directly from Neda's family. They're not political figures. They were thrown into this against their will. Their daughter was taken from them for, a really trite reason. And, through this project, it was just amazing, and through everything I've been doing in the past year, I feel like a lot of people look at Iran like it's 70 million terrorists. And it's not. It's 70 million people who are exactly like us. And I feel like we lose sight of that a lot of times, Neda just wanted the basic things that we all enjoy, to wear the clothes that she wants to wear, to not have to wear the hijab when she goes out, to be able to dance, and that not be, something that under their law is punishable. She just like us. So great, we've got the hard part done. We got the footage out. So how do we make this go viral? Everyone's telling me Facebook, Twitter. No. I need to make this go viral in Iran. They don't have internet, or if they do, it gets filtered when it's stuff like this really quick. So how do I start this viral campaign? From San Francisco in Iran. Which brings me to my last part. And it's really ironic that Atlas Networks is here because I didn't know they were coming nor a sponsor, but they provided all of the bandwidth and all of the insane capacity on very short notice. I called them, and 5 days later, they had brought in insane amounts of bandwidth for this project. So just want to give a huge, huge thanks to them. So while Nathan, who was one of their tech guys, I think it was 3 in the morning, we're trying to finish up the name servers and make sure the web servers, and it's in 3 languages, Farsi, Arabic, and English, 25 formats apiece. So if you're gonna play it on, one of the formats that we really wanted to focus on was 3GP. So that people could exchange the movie from phone to phone in Iran, because Bluetooth is definitely how people communicate there. But after a long night, trying to get stuff set up and working with Nathan, I was in the car on the way to the airport because I don't know where I was going, but I was trying to finish up the site, test everything. I'm in one of those airport lounges trying to get all the torrents in order, breaking a sweat because they're paging me on that thing. And so I think everything's working. I don't really have a plan besides setting up a website, and I sent out 4 tweets. Then I sat there because I was on a lovely United flight without Wi-Fi, and just waited for 5 hours. I'm like, I wonder what the hell is happening. At this point in time, HBO was very, very nice about letting me drive the project the way I wanted to. I sat down with the president. I'm like, you just need to tell me you're not going to sue me. Go away. I don't want anything from you. And so I posted those 4 tweets and, couldn't help for anything but the best. This was the vanity site. Real quick, 3 steps, and you either get a direct download or a torrent. It's up to you. I promise you I didn't put these in because Atlas asked me to. Here are, that's one of the switches that was brought in for the project. All the green Ethernet cords, which were on purpose. And, just one of the, I don't know if you can see it, just one of the Neda machines. And again, it was a really, really big undertaking. And so right about there is when my flight took off. And within, I don't know, what is that, 2 minutes, we're pushing 320 megs a second. So already off to a good start. This is the first hour. So we still had pretty steady demand. It hadn't gone quite as large, and so we're maxing out at about 400 megabits a second. And then that's the first day with peaks of 700 megabits a second. You can see the different BitTorrent servers and the mobile, the different language servers. But, we only brought in a total of 800 megabits. And that was all, going just as planned. It was really just amazing to see how 4 tweets, and all of a sudden we're pushing out over 2 copies of the DivX every second. I mean, if you multiply that out, like, we're putting this movie into the hands of tons and tons of people. And that is the first month. And I had some friends at YouTube who gave me one of the accounts that let you post videos longer than 10 minutes. And within, what is that? I uploaded it a few days before anyone knew about it, but within 3 days, we had 250,000 views on YouTube. And so it was phenomenally successful on YouTube, especially for a long-form video, which is kind of rare. And not only that, but it went even better than I could have expected. I posted the DVD image, like the raw one that I got from the studio, with the watermarkings and everything, just in case somebody wanted to burn a DVD and play it on a big screen or something. But what ended up happening was these little piracy groups acted like they got a screener somehow. And they went out, they took the DVD image, re-ripped it, even though it had already been done for them, and then came up with all these different releases, which, again, couldn't have worked out better. And there's a little bit more. Aside from the broadcast here in the States and the massive internet distribution, we worked with an organization to acquire some satellites to illegally broadcast into Iran, which, always fun, just a Tuesday. And we broadcasted a total of, I want to say 3 times. There was a lot happening at this point, so I'm kind of sketchy on that. But during our first broadcast, I was in LA, and I was sitting there with the director of the film, and we knew when it started, and then about 15 minutes later, I started getting reports from friends in Tehran that electricity had gone out. And so we're sitting there like drinking a glass of wine, and I'm like, oh my God. I think that just goes to show the power of a message that they don't want out. They don't want people hearing Neda's story, her family's story. And, when you can't jam the satellites, that's why it's good to have 3. It's much harder to jam 3 than 1. Do the next best thing. Turn off electricity in the area where most people have satellite receivers. And that's what they did. So at this point, I'm just going to say thanks so much for your time. Thanks, Kat, for everything. Chris, for organizing this. And I think I'm doing Q&A. So.
Iran is just one country. Are other organizations following your lead, using your techniques and things that you've pioneered?
Well, we have started working on a handful of other countries, which I don't want to give anyone any heads up. But I think that, I hope other organizations are pursuing it. I think the biggest challenge is the sanctions. If I would not have known correct people, if I wouldn't have had our law firm, getting over that hurdle for your average organization is impossible. There's Freegate and UltraSurf, which are funded by the Falun Gong, so they come with their own strings. There's, of course, Tor, which has performance issues in a lot of countries, or at least oppressive countries. We've got 35% of the internet under some form of government-imposed filtering. Like, the thing is under siege. When I grew up, that was the last thing I could have imagined. It was always my escape portal out of Ohio. So there aren't enough organizations working on it in my book.
Austin, first, thank you again for all that you and your team have done. It's an amazing story. I got kind of a 3-part question. First off, what's the state of things today? Can you give us any update about what's going on internally? Secondly, after you guys aired the show, was there any backlash on her family at all? And then last but not least, as we're sitting in this room, what can we actively do to support those people and the cause over there today?
So I'm going to answer those in a different order than you asked. The good thing is Neda's family is untouchable. If the regime messes with them, the backlash would be just unbelievable. Neda died with one eye open, which under Islamic law makes her a martyr. And, that tied with her family. There are, our hope from the beginning, which has panned out, is that they would be safe because they are so high profile. Everyone in their neighborhood knows who they are. And so we've been lucky, and I think that's a risk they were willing to take. There's lots of people who are willing to talk about Neda, except for her family. So the fact that we were able to, the rest of the team, because I really had nothing to do with getting in contact with them, was able to pull that off and convince them that it would be safe, is a testament to them. The state of things now, it's, I don't want to say depressing. A lot of people that I talk to in Iran are just scared. If you look at the anniversary of the election, there were a lot of reports that there were 2 million paramilitary brought into Tehran, which is a city of 15 million people by day, 10 million by night. So you've got one paramilitary for every 2 people. And, you know, I talked to one high school student there the day of the anniversary. He's like, you think I'm going to go outside? No. Like, you walk outside, you're going to get shot. And then how people can help. You know, I think the biggest thing from my perspective is, you know, writing your congressmen or your senators and getting people to just update the way we legislate technology. I mean, if you look at Cuba, and as much as I am thrilled with the Obama administration in regards to how State Department has moved forward at light speed relative to other administrations, you know, some of the policies they have passed, you know, again, in regards to Cuba, make no sense. There was one law passed called the IDEA Act, which is the Iranian Digital Empowerment Act. And it makes it legal for Microsoft, Google, whatnot, to provide free market software to those in Iran. But they can't get to the website in the first place. Like, why? I mean, it's a complete waste of legislation. I mean, it gets a lot of press. It's cute. But I think our foreign policy, our sanction policy, like, there's so much technology can do, and the fact that our project was put on hold for 9 months because of this, you know, and again, the project would have completely fallen apart had we not had the right people. You know, I would hands down say that that's the biggest way people can help, because there aren't enough people who are engaged enough or who care enough or who know enough about the topic to, you know, really get things moving.
One question. You waited 9 months for this to clear state. Is there another country that you could have hosted this from that would have gone faster?
Being a U.S. citizen, I at all times am subject to OFAC regulation. So even if we would have incorporated in
maybe some team expansion
Amsterdam,
Iceland, with a few new team members?
You know, we considered a few countries, Panama, especially because they don't answer any U.S. subpoenas. You know, there's a handful of real sketchy companies who do good work, but run out of Panama for that exact reason. And that's something that we considered. And at the end of the day, you know, I would just rather do things the legal way than, as much as I love Julian Assange, you know, one of the things WikiLeaks does is they always move the document through Sweden first, because that puts it under Swedish protection. You know, until that's upheld in court, in some international court, I just, you know, at the advice of our lawyers, you know, Warren Christopher is one of the partners in our law firm. You know, I kind of just went with what they told me. It may have been possible, and there are a lot of loopholes, but, you know, part of what we do is we provide the actual communication service too. So we're regulated as a phone company. You know, so the whole thing just spirals out of control, and as long as it did take, I'm happy that we're allowed to do it and it's hands off now.
I think it's a wonderful achievement. It just scares me that it takes 9 months. That's too big a turning radius.
Well, and that's the fastest it's ever happened. I mean, and that's only because we had so much internal support, and because, you know, I spent as much time lobbying every senator or congressperson that would meet with me. You know, here are our issues, here's our application, here's what's going on. I don't care if it's McCain, Casey, I mean, like, Pelosi. You know, we had a lot of internal support, and it still took 9 months. But this is why I say that the policies themselves need to be updated. People shouldn't be applying for licenses. I should have never had to apply for a license in the first place. You know, but all of us need to make sure that our State Department is approaching this 21st century correctly, and not, you know, sanctions don't hurt anyone that's in control of a country. You know, in Iran, they've got oil wells. You think these little sanctions are going to hurt their oil money when Iran has, you know, oil agreements with, I think it's 12 countries in Europe? You know, France, Italy, Greece, Austria, Germany. You know, they have all got oil deals with Iran. So these sanctions do nothing but hurt the people at the bottom. And, you know, that's, again, where I think we all can play a big part.
One question and one trite comment. When you were saying about how people were poo-pooing the Twitter bringing down Iran. And I started to think that it's just the messenger, and Paul Revere had a horse. The person behind the keyboard just has Twitter. And I guess it's kind of a similar thing. It's just, you know, the message and the messenger. It's not really necessarily how they get there or how the message gets across. And did you have any support from EFF, or were all involved? EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation?
You know, I meet with Danny on a pretty regular basis in San Francisco. One thing where EFF and I completely depart is the issue of open source. If you look at the anti-censorship industry as a whole, the only open source tool is Tor. I was born and raised on open source. Everything I know, every language I know is completely self-taught from, you know, all the wonderful people in the community that contribute. And, you know, this project has just been one where our team collectively decided, and for a handful of legal reasons, that this was not the time or place for open source. And so I think that's where the EFF and I kind of, you know, we're in regular communication, but we kind of, you know, parted ways there. I would say they're pro. I don't want to put words in the EFF's mouth, but I would say the projects they stand by are not closed-sourced ones. But again, they've been great.
If this Google Verizon thing goes through, are you going to start having to fight for us in the U.S.?
I don't. See, that's when I moved to Iceland. You know, it's really difficult. I think what's going on, I mean, this Google Verizon deal, I hope someone intervenes ASAP. You guys should all be supporting Al Franken. I think he is one of the best people in DC right now who is really tackling this correctly. But I think I would probably run into some, let's call it pushback from DC if we decided to get involved in that. That's the nicest way I can think to phrase it.
I'm sure this is just a quick comment. You probably don't wear tinfoil hats, and I try not to. But any concern or paranoia with your recent break-in?
Based on the way everything played out, no. Okay. You know, I made a few stupid mistakes, and my laptop was in clear view, and, you know, it just, first off, everything, all the data I work with is encrypted and protected. I mean, I don't know my own passwords, so that if I get kidnapped, you're not going to get anything out of me. You know, everything on my computer is encrypted. I don't keep, like, even my mail client doesn't keep any of the mail on the computer. You know, so everything is kept on one of our servers. They're all in secured facilities that you can only get in with my hand. We have to be really, really safe. You know, when you're getting people in and out of Iran and working on their asylum cases, and you can't risk that, you know? Does your mom and dad worry? I don't think my dad really understood what I did until he read the Newsweek thing. He just thought I was kind of crazy. You know, I'll never forget, like 4 days into everything, my mom's like, Austin, just stop it. You know, what's wrong with you? Like, why do you always have to run around doing this? And, you know, I think that now that they kind of understand everything, and it's kind of something that I've chosen to take on, so, you know, they've been very, very supportive.
Probably very proud, probably very scared.
Right. Well, and, you know, I didn't want to throw my dad under the bus earlier, but, like, after he saw the Neda documentary, I felt like, you know, it was so nice to hear him talk about Iran in a more enlightened way. You know, and, you know, those are the little differences that we want to make, and it's great to see that within my own family.